the first public sign of dissent has appeared. St. John, New Brunswick MP Wayne Long, who had already said that he was not running again, is circulating a letter to other Liberal MPs saying,
Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Liberal rebellion has begun. Although the cabinet ministers are saying what Trudeau wants them to, the backbenchers have finally had enough and are actively soliciting support from other Liberals to call on Justin Trudeau to resign.
Let's take a look.
Incredible, hardest working individual that we know, the Honourable Justin
a party fundraiser with a wounded leader doing his best to pump up the troops.
We have Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives who've decided that the way they get to win is to make people even angrier.
But whatever the Conservatives are doing, it worked Monday in the former Liberal stronghold of Toronto St. Paul's. And 4 days later, Trudeau still has not taken a single question from a reporter about that Conservative triumph.
Mr. Prime Minister, following the loss in Toronto, will you stay on as leader?
Opposition leader Pierre Poilievre has not made himself available to reporters either, but he's on time off with his family this week. Trudeau, on the other hand, filled his week with several photo ops and party fundraisers and left it to his colleagues to speak about his future.
I think I speak for Manitoba Caucus that we are 100% supportive of the Prime Minister going forward as our leader.
The Prime Minister is committed to leading us into the next election, and he has our support.
The Prime Minister is the person that is the best placed to take the fight to Pierre Poilievre.
Tell us how you really feel, Mark.
Are you convinced? Because I'm not convinced.
I also want to point out an error right at the beginning. The Prime Minister is not honourable. The Prime Minister is the right honourable. The cabinet ministers are honourable, and they all maintain those titles for the rest of their lives, even if they're no longer Prime Minister or if they are no longer in cabinet.
Or if they're no longer honourable, they still get the title, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
But isn't it interesting how Justin Trudeau leaves it to everybody else to clean up the damage?
Oh, of course. He wouldn't get his hands dirty. Why would he have to do any work?
Right. And Mark Miller, like, I'm sorry, but if you're trying to convince anyone that you have any faith in this guy, you've convinced everybody the exact opposite. Same as Chrystia Freeland. Like, he's the right person to lead us into the next election.
Well, because honestly, I don't think they ever fathomed that the Liberals would lose Toronto St. Paul's.
No, I think that set off an atom bomb in Liberal world. I think they are scared to death right now.
They're in panic mode for sure.
And as we said before, none of them know what to do. They don't know what to say because there's been no caucus meeting. So literally all of these ministers are kind of on their own. And none of them they don't know what to do. And it's written all over their face. Like Mark Miller, he was just like, how do I get it out of this? How do I get out of this? And he's like, he's the perfect place. I think he's a guy and not a place. So like none of them have any idea what to do. But the video's not done yet.
But some no longer share that opinion. The Prime Minister has a legacy to be proud of, but it's time for new ideas, new energy, and a new leader, Catherine McKenna said. There is too much at stake in this election, especially on the economy and climate. Former BC Premier Christy Clark came to the same conclusion that Trudeau must go. I want the Liberal Party that I used to vote for to come back, she told the Toronto Star. As for Trudeau's caucus, the first public sign of dissent has appeared. St. John, New Brunswick MP Wayne Long, who had already said that he was not running again, is circulating a letter to other Liberal MPs saying it's time for new leadership and new direction.
He's not wrong.
No. And I actually give some kudos, tiny little bit, to that New Brunswick MP, because what does he care? He's not running again.
But at the same time, I mean, he's still in caucus. Trudeau could kick him out like yesterday for making that statement. You know what I mean?
Oh, I agree. That's why I gave him a little bit of kudos, because he doesn't have to, right? He's already announced that he's not running, so it's not, it doesn't really matter in terms of his political career whether the Liberals do well in the next election or not. So he's at least being unselfish at this point in trying to make a change.
Well, and I think the issue here is that at least the backbenchers, they're the ones saying it out loud, but they're the ones that seem to understand that, like, this party is self-destructing in real time. And they don't want to just sit there and stay quiet and watch it happen.
Yeah, and they don't really have any other option here. And I think they're finally also realizing that they outnumber the cabinet.
They sure do. I think there's 37 cabinet ministers?
Something like that.
And so that means there's over 100 of the backbenchers.
120 odd. So you have the ability to actually make some actual change here.
Well, because let's not forget, these Liberal MPs, they went into politics, one would assume, because they love their country and they love this party. I mean, why would you go into politics for a party that you hate, right? So I imagine that it must be very distressing to watch the party that you love just self-destruct in this manner.
Well, and you heard the one lady, as quoted as saying, I want to get back to the Liberal Party I used to vote for. And this is what we've been saying, because Trudeau has perverted it so much that it is further left than the NDP party. It is no longer center left. It is far left. So this is what a lot of people, and a lot of Liberal voters are noticing, and that's why they're not choosing to just not vote. Because they want to vote Liberal, but the Liberal Party that they used to know doesn't even exist anymore. The next piece that we're going to be turning to that is in the same theme is a piece that was written in the Globe and Mail today. So it's titled, Trudeau Faces Fresh Calls to Resign as Liberal Leader.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau faced new pressure Friday over his leadership of the Liberal Party, with one MP and a former member of his cabinet calling on him to resign, while another MP said party members should be given a say on whether he stays. Catherine McKenna, who served in both the environment and infrastructure portfolios in Mr. Trudeau's cabinet, said in a statement Friday that the Liberal Party, quote, isn't about one person, end quote, and that the, quote, Prime Minister has a legacy to be proud of, but it's time for new ideas, new energy, and a new leader, end quote. The leadership questions follow the party's stunning by-election defeat this week in a Toronto riding the party has held for decades. Later on Friday, New Brunswick MP Wayne Long sent a letter to caucus members outlining his views on why he believes Mr. Trudeau should resign. He is the first member of the caucus to make such a statement publicly. Quote, for the future of our party and for the good of our country, we need new leadership and a new direction, end quote, Mr. Long wrote. The result in Toronto St. Paul's, held by former Liberal MP Carolyn Bennett since 1997, has fueled concern among Liberals that the party is heading toward a disastrous result in the next general election, scheduled for fall 2025. Liberal MP Nate Erskine-Smith, who represents the urban Toronto riding of Beaches East York, said Liberal Party members should be given a say on the future of the party's leadership. In a social media video released on Friday, Mr. Erskine-Smith, who is not seeking re-election, said while he understands voter frustration with Mr. Trudeau, the public also needs to know who might be willing to replace the Prime Minister should he step down. Quote, the decision ultimately depends upon who is in the bullpen warming up, end quote, he said. He then mused about whether former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney, who has hinted he may be interested, would be a better option.
Quote, Carney's got a lot to learn about campaigning, and it's not clear to me, at least, what his version of a progressive direction for this country means, end quote, he said. Quote, there are smart and charismatic people in the current cabinet, too, end quote. Mr. Erskine-Smith said party members should have a say on the matter, but did not explain how that would work. Quote, Let's have members, activists, organizers, and grassroots donors across the country decide, end quote, he said. Quote, that's what I would do if I was the Prime Minister. Rally the troops, tell us why you want it, and what comes next, end quote. Several prominent voices with historical ties to the party have gone further than Mr. Erskine-Smith and want Mr. Trudeau to step down, including Jean Chrétien-era cabinet ministers John Manley and Wayne Easter, as well as former BC Premier Christy Clark. On Thursday, Industry Minister François-Philippe Champagne would only repeat an equivocating response when asked whether Mr. Trudeau is the right person to lead the Liberals into the next campaign. Quote, the leader is the leader, end quote, he told the Globe and Mail several times. The Prime Minister is also being given the benefit of the doubt by some party veterans, such as Lloyd Axworthy, who told the Globe that while this is a moment of reckoning for the Liberals, Mr. Trudeau should stay on. Mr. Axworthy, a Liberal MP from 1979 to 2000, said in an interview that the government has another year or so of runway ahead of the election, and, quote, they should be using the time to change course in many ways, end quote. Quote, I think it's time that there be a little more of a reckoning, end quote, he said. Mr. Axworthy, who served as a Foreign Affairs Minister under Mr. Chrétien, said this moment is not only about responding to the by-election results, but realizing that what the party is doing now is not connecting. Quote, I think they have to start thinking in a more expansive, bigger terms and give Canadians something really fresh and important to think about in terms of where the country is going, end quote, he said. Mr. Axworthy said MPs need to be in their ridings talking to people about how they want to confront big issues such as climate change, artificial intelligence, and nuclear weapons. He also said the Liberals could revive a former promise on electoral reform, and that issues of this kind get people talking about something more than the day-by-day crossfire. In the 2015 campaign, Mr. Trudeau promised it would be the last election under current first-past-the-post system. In 2016, a parliamentary committee studied electoral reform, but no changes were ever adopted. Mr. Trudeau is heading into the Canada Day long weekend, having yet to answer questions from the media about his party's upset by-election loss. Earlier this week, in prepared remarks, he said he heard Canadians' concerns and frustrations. So, Trudeau is, he's on his own. And he's starting to hear calls from literally everywhere for him to resign. Former MPs, current MPs, former ministers, former MPPs. It seems like everybody is telling him, dude, it's over.
Because they know, all these Liberal MPs and cabinet ministers, present and former, they know that if he does not resign, it's actually going to be better for the Conservatives and they'll probably pick up even more seats.
So, kind of selfishly, it's actually better if he doesn't resign, because that's actually what the whole Conservative strategy has been built around. 9 years of Trudeau, not worth the cost, not worth the crime, not worth the corruption. We've all heard the talking points. So it's better for the Conservatives if he stays. And it's not that it's a worry that the Conservatives will lose if he doesn't. It's just, it would increase the victory for the Conservatives if he does stay. And Trudeau seems to be the only one who thinks that he's the best guy for the job to go up and campaign against Pierre Poilievre in a federal election.
I think the rivalry there, like Trudeau doesn't want to give it up. I think he thinks he can beat Pierre. I think it's hubris.
Well, and the issue is that, yes, Pierre's been around for a long time. Pierre knows the game inside and out, and he knows the rules. And he has Trudeau beat on every single level. So Trudeau, it's up to you, but for the good of your party, you might as well resign. For the good of the Conservatives, stick around.
They don't like you.